well. And just to come in on the back of what Grania said there, I think it's really very exciting development that the CA perhaps finally have really got themselves into gear with supporting secondary education, and are really thinking about that. And Grania has been appointed their education officer, is already doing an amazing job. And across all 4 qualifications. So that's really welcome news. And there's a few things that I'll probably mention a little bit later on. Some of us were, not many, but a few veterans here from the summer of 2020, when we all got together and just had a kind of Zoom call to try and work out how we were doing a lockdown teaching. And I guess this builds from that, but it's much more CA-led, and feels like we've come a long way since then. I hope that this will be quite relaxed. It's after school time, and B, people will really feel welcome to kind of chip in, ask questions, make comments, sort of say, oh, well, I've done a much better Padlet than that. Here's an example. Because otherwise you'll hear far too much of me talking and then a little bit of other people as well. So please do, come up with ideas or suggestions, or just say, no, I think that's rubbish, but very up for that. And let's have a kind of nice relaxed hour or so. So there's so many different areas that we could go into, but I'm just going to start. I'm going to share screen just to let, I think most people know about the resource bank here, and the thinking behind the resource bank is not to try and outdo all the stuff that was being shared, say on Facebook or on the Classics Library, which is fantastic, but certainly in 2020 the conversation tend to be that people who came from a history background were using one place to leave resources, others maybe from a classics background were using the Classics Library, and to try and find a common place for ancient history A-level resources. This is not GCSE, sadly. I don't teach that myself, but happy to help set that one up. But also maybe things which are a little bit more informal, like quizzes that we're leaving that we might feel A, are difficult to leave the Classics Library, and B, we're a bit nervous to leave, then we can just dump them in here. So if you don't know about this, do drop me an email. I'll put that in my in the chat at the end, and I'll gladly add you to this Google Doc. And if you're already in it, please do A, use it, and B, drop your own stuff. There's lots and lots of things in there. And in parallel, we do also have a directory, which is on the first tab of this Google Sheet. So at the moment, we've got quite a lot of people on this directory, which is, so there's 57, 56. If you are not on the directory you'd like to be, do let me know. Again, one of the advantages here, everyone's consented to have their email on here, and you can see who else is teaching your depth study. Again, this is at A level. And I will just flag, we've got all the past omnibus here. We'll come back to that. I don't feel I can dive into that one first about how to use omnibus articles, but there's some great ones for ancient history teaching. What I wanted to do first though, and maybe Grania, if there are questions coming out, you can let me know, because I can't see chat at the moment. But I just wanted to go a little bit on a bit of a curveball, and I wonder if anyone's used Padlet before. First of all, hi James, gentle reminder, you are beautiful. I need that on this Monday afternoon. I'm going to get myself a tea. Isn't that wonderful? That's not the reason that I've started using Padlet. So we have, I think, quite an enlightened appraisal policy at school, which is that when you have your observed lesson for an appraisal, you have to try something new, and it's a requirement. And so rather than like, can you teach a basic lesson normally, they actually say you have to state what you haven't done before, and it's going to be an experimental lesson. And it's pretty terrifying, but actually it tends to be really productive. And so I played around with Padlet, which I played around with a little bit before. It's an app which, like most of these apps, you can get it, you can pay for a kind of a super upgraded version, or you can just have the basic. So I've got the basic, and I'll show you what you can do just with the basic. You're allowed 5 Padlets. That won't mean anything to you at the moment. But that doesn't matter, because every student in your class is also allowed 5 Padlets, and they can share it around anyone else. So, if you've got 10 students in your A-level class, that's 50 Padlets. So you can get around the fact that you're only allowed 5. So if I show you what I've done here. So actually this was created by one of my students. She shared it with me, and it opens out to, oopsie, it's going really slowly because I'm showing my screen. It actually opens out to this because I pre-prepared it. So what you've got here is Google Maps. It opens out in Google Maps, and then you can overwrite it. So this is time span 2 on the Greek period study. I'm very happy to share this, by the way. And then I've then put down all the tags for where I want them to look. So that, for example, is the Battle of Eurymedon. And it just says Battle of Eurymedon in the early 460s. There's nothing very exciting there in terms of the actual content. You can put more exciting stuff. Naxos being the first city that's forced back into the Delian League. But really the idea behind this is they read about so many of these places, and it's to give them the kind of spatial awareness of where all these things are happening. What have we got up here? Sestos, a little bit more detail there. So it's really easy to just select this. Here is another one. This is time span 4. So what have we got going on in time span 4? Amphipolis and the Thracewood region. Okay. And for some reason we set the Google map, so it was just kind of the Google Earth style basically at that point. And it's just, my students really like this. You know, it helps them revise. As I said, there's nothing, you can put all these tags down. There's nothing very exciting about it, but except that you can just see where everything is happening. So we're a Google school, so we can get straight onto Padlet through a Google login. So this is my school login here. And then if I do, it's very simple. If you do make a Padlet, and you get various options. There's other ways of using Padlet. Do go and experiment with it. But if you just click on map, we can just choose. Look at it, all a bit silly, my Radiant Padlet and all the rest of it. So it will come in. I mean, that's lovely, isn't it? Let's face it. Here, sorry, I've got a dog by me at the moment who's very interested in Padlet, so I'm just trying to keep him out of the way. And you can choose anywhere. Oh God, this is really annoying, this dog. You can choose to go anywhere you like, and then close in. It's going a bit slowly because I'm sharing my screen. But if you want to go to sort of Athens or whatever, I need to get this bar out of the way. You can go in, you can go to Izmir if you want. And then, so we've got our kind of Aegean here. And at this point, I now have to remember how to do this because I haven't done it for a while. No, you just go to the plus sign. Okay. So drag and drop this pin anywhere on the map. So I don't know, let's go to Eretria, which is about here, isn't it? And then it will try and find, so Chalkis, for example, Euboea, Greece. Okay. And then you put whatever message you like about Euboea, Greece there, and then you just publish it. Okay. It's great in terms of working with students. As I say, they can all share this with each other. So they can be working on this collaboratively. And it's a really good thing, maybe once you finish, say, a time span, to say, right, guys, you know, the years 470 to 460 or whatever, just spend 15 minutes on class now, just mapping everything and also writing in your notes. And they can all be working collaboratively if they want to. They can do it as homework at home. Obviously, if they've got access to a computer, hopefully they have, and come up with a Padlet and then use it as revision. So that's Padlet. I wonder if at that point people have got any questions about that, or has there been any questions in chat? Come on, guys, ask me a question. Someone. No? Is everyone happy? Has that changed anyone's life? Silence. If you're not a Google school, can you still? Yeah, Padlet is available. It's just any login, like most of these things. I say the reason our school is quite strict about using technology through a school email and stuff like that. And so the students are allowed to log in via their email using Google, basically. So it's a kind of, from our point of view, kind of safeguarding thing. But yeah, looks fab. Do you need a Gmail? Definitely not. No. I mean, hopefully now everyone is at home Googling Padlet and trying to come up with it. But as I said, it's really that's just the free package. You can do some kind of whizzy upgrade, but I don't think you need to. The key thing is everyone gets 5 Padlets, including all your students, and then you can share it with each other, and you can write on someone else's Padlet. It's very good for other other teaching as well for all sorts of other things, revision and what have you. But just that map function on Padlet, I think, is really helpful. Any thoughts there? Silence. Okay. So Alex, so you can definitely use it for essay planning as well. And again, that's, Alex, I imagine you find that's quite good for collaborating, students kind of working together, and they can type in, you can kind of set themes, can't you, and things like that. Yeah. How do you share with your students? Penny asks. That's a good question. And I'd have to look at it again. It's basically very obvious, he says. But essentially, I think, what is this? There you go. Can you see up here? It says share. So you can then add members. You can copy the link to the clipboard. There's a QR code. Look at this. How can you not share it? Basically, share on Google Classroom, Twitter, Facebook. You can go crazy. And I've got a few Padlets. I started this last term, and I probably should have dropped them into the resources area. So the ones that I have created so far, I'll definitely drop into the resource area for people to work with and add to, I guess. Okay. I feel I've said quite a bit already. Why don't we jump into someone else? Tara, do you want to have a go at Jamboard at this point?
Give it a whirl. If I can get the screen share to work. So, evening everybody. I just thought I'd focus on one thing, which is Jamboard, which I started using during lockdown. And this is where I hope it works. There we go. Oh no, I've just realized that I'm going to open it up on Padlet because I was just looking for it. But here we go. So I use Jamboard for an awful lot of things. We're quite lucky in that we have a set of Chromebooks for every faculty. So they're used quite heavily at my school. We're a Google school as well. So we can do collaborative things reasonably easily and reasonably often. So I just thought I'd show you 4 different things that I've used for ancient history over the last couple of years. Okay, I might start at this end actually. Here we go. So, for example, studying the Persians. Hopefully it's going to load. There we go. Oh yeah, see, they love annotating, don't they? Look at that. They love a bit of Darius. I just think essay planning on Jamboard is really helpful because you can just get them to shove everything on a slide and then you can reorganize it as you will. So I'll quite often pick up their notes and sort them out. Color coding can help as well. I'm not sure they've done that here, but color coding into different themes, that sort of thing. We do annotating sources as well. There's that. The sticky notes are very popular. You always get the student, I don't know about anybody else, who wants to tidy them. So you don't have to do that. They will tidy them up for you and it looks lovely. So that's in class. Then what's this one? I don't know if it's taking as long to load as it is for me, probably. So working on sources with Cleopatra, there's a few of these, and I just put them into groups, and they had to write down what they knew from each source. So this was drawing together the whole thing once they finished the unit. Okay. And it was a way of focusing them on important questions. So how successful was Cleopatra's relationship with Antony? We've got coins on there. We've got sources on there, just helping them think thematically, that sort of thing. There we go. And then what's this one? Game on. Right. Okay. So one thing that I think is quite successful is just going through mock exams. So this going through the mock exams was entirely based on Jamboard. So we just had everything on here. And I just wanted to start with a bit of a crazy starter to get them using it. I mean, clearly they love Lloyd Llewellyn-Jones. That he's a big hit with them for Persia. If you haven't found his Persica channel on YouTube, there aren't very many videos, but the 2 or 3 that are there are absolutely fantastic. And his new book's good as well. Then we talked about revision techniques. So there were only, as you can see, 16 of them. So I could get a little box on the screen for all of them. I'm not sure I could do that these days, but maybe I'd have to branch onto 2 different slides. And then we went through the different questions. They added ideas. There we go, that sort of thing. So I'd pre-prep this, obviously. There we go. And it was just a really good way of going through the mock exams with it being a little bit more interactive than just, the normal way from the front, or even in groups. So they could actually bounce off each other really easily and see what they all thought. And then one other way that I've used Jamboard more recently is to try and get them to construct a shared revision resource. So this is my current year 11s last year. So they were given this as a homework task, and they were assigned a source to work on. So I knew which one had done what page of this. So they haven't got, I don't think they've got their names on this, but I knew what they'd done. And they were sent home to annotate it. There we go. They vary in quality, obviously. And it took a while to set up, but it's now them. There we go. And it was good because even one of my least able was actually able just to say something sensible, and then everybody could celebrate it and use it. So, you know, it's one of those things that is actually pretty simple. The tools down the left-hand side, you know, there's a drawing tool, there's an eraser tool. The sticky notes are fab. And then sticky notes just come up like that. Yeah, there we go. You can change the color. You can make them bigger. You can make them smaller. You can move them around. That's really helpful. You can add images quite easily. We tend not to use the shapes or text box. Well, no, we use text boxes, but you know, not so much the shapes, not so much the laser. But they're basic tools, and yet you can do an awful lot with them. So I found Jamboard really helpful for collaborative learning and collaborative resource creation. So I'm sure I've missed many different ways of using Jamboard and will be very eager to hear more of them. But if I just stop sharing for a minute so I can see what's going on. There we go. Yeah, has anybody else used Jamboard in a good way, or has anybody got any questions? OneNote, Sarah, is that to me or to James about Padlet?
That's about Jamboards.
Okay,
Yeah.
I don't know. Sorry.
Yeah, as what I was going to say is it's very much a Google thing, isn't it, Jamboard?
Yeah. Yeah.
So we were talking beforehand that it is amazing. I've got one or two, and I got one open. How they love to graffiti and play around. So this was actually a really fantastic bit of work on Pericles for the A-level, but some of the drawings were pretty special. Basically, that's their little sort of, you know, concession to things. But yeah, it's, if you are using Google, it's pretty straightforward to go into Jamboard and just create it. It's one of those different options, which I think you get. No, you don't get it here. Probably not showing it at the moment. But it's good fun, good collaborative work.
Cool. I think that's me done. I might hand over to someone else. I was going to talk about BlueKit, but they put a paywall up, so it's no fun if everybody can't see it.
Are there any other questions? Rachel said, love Jamboard, use it lots in lockdown, got into different timelines. Yeah, it's very good for timelines. Follow the map around with their pointers when doing pilgrimage embrace. Yeah. So yeah, Donald, I don't know. Donald, do you want to talk a little bit about, are you prepared to talk a bit about OneNote and how you could use that?
Yeah, sure. And my school at the moment, we're in a slightly difficult situation because our year 12s now all have devices in the classroom and our year 13s don't, which then means I slightly sort of teach in two quite distinctly different ways. But I'm happy to show sort of the sorts of things that I do use OneNote for. Let me just share my screen here. Okay, so this is my this is my OneNote for my year 13s. We're doing the Flavian depth study. In fact, we're doing the Flavian depth study. One thing I use OneNote for, which I rather enjoy, I think one of the key problems for the Roman side of the course is that we have quite a few different sources that can need bringing together, which is I think slightly more of a problem for the Roman side of the course than it's the Greek side. And I found one thing that works well for us anyway is I create a rota for a so-called source tracker. This one needs to be expanded a little bit this year, such that every week one of my students will be on the rota, and it is their job then to put our sources into this source tracker. And I think one of the reasons that the OneNote works well for this is because we have the collaboration space allows us to, not unlike the Jamboard, have a space where everyone is able to see and collaborate and type into. And I get them to do well, that looks something like this. The idea is behind our source tracker is that for every source they do, this will not be the one place to look for all the information about each of these sources, but it is a sort of a reference work, a source encyclopedia, that if they are doing their revision or if they're writing an essay, they can then refer to this and then go back to the relevant handout or the relevant page where then that source is. And I think my students have found this a very useful way to keep, well, I like it for two reasons. Firstly, it helps us bring all of those different sources together. Actually, this particular page is not a great example because most of the sources for this are all Tacitus. But for a lot of the Roman side, I find we have a multitude of different sources, and sometimes they struggle to link their Suetonius to their Cassius Dio to their Velleius Paterculus or whatever it is. And this kind of brings it all together into one place. And the second reason I like doing this with OneNote is that it kind of creates a little bit of a similar to the Jamboard, a very collaborative element to it, that they are all working on this for each other, and I appreciate that. Similarly, if I go to this is how I tend to get most of the my sources out there. So this is in my teacher only bit, but I will distribute these pages, and this is how I tend to get a lot of the sources out there, that I will sort of collect all the sources for a particular topic. As you can see here, this is this? This is the failure of Galba and the rise of Otho in the year of the four emperors. I'll collect the sources here, and this is a good way to again keep them together. And then if you distribute one of these pages, none of this is at all. None of this is at all rewriting a real wheel or anything, but then they will have their own copy. I notice Bevan hasn't made any notes on this one, but they have their own copy that they can then individually scribble on. So that's a little bit of how I would use OneNote. To be honest, I think I can probably do a lot more. Indeed, I'm interested to do a little bit more of the kind of combined essay planning now I've seen, Tara, what you're doing with the Jamboard, because I think a lot of that same functionality exists in OneNote. In OneNote, but maybe doesn't look quite as nice, to be honest. But I think that capacity is there as well.
Great. Thank you very much. That's very helpful, Donald. Is there anyone who wants to come in on that or add something or ask any questions? Silence. Okay. That's really helpful. Well, I'll just add in, I think, at this point, one or two more things. And if we come to, the dog's just turned up again as soon as I start talking. It's a very needy dog. So memorize, just to let people know, this is links in the resources folder there, that I did write this course a couple of years ago probably. I really like memorize just because it unlike all the sort of Quizlets and all the rest of it, it's got an algorithm which basically tracks your brain. The dog's being really annoying, can I just say? He's licking me because he doesn't want me to be talking to other people. Sorry if I'm seeming distracted. And so the great thing about memorize is that it sort of tracks your mistakes. And so this quiz is out there for anyone to use. I know some people have found it useful. It's openly available. It's not perfect. It's probably got too much text on it. But what it does, you can first of all select the ones that you think you do know and you don't know. The idea behind it is that your brain is a garden where you have to sow seeds and then you have to keep watering them. But when you keep getting things wrong, it will over-test it. And it's brilliant for Latin vocab as well and things like that. But the students who've used it for me have also really enjoyed it. So just please be aware that it's there. I can see that there's one person in the chat So I will check. Trying to curtail my comments there, indeed, thank you. Very good. Oh God, literally about to get a dog on the screen. It's been really annoying. Sorry, this is really annoying dog you are at the moment. It's probably adding some comedy to the evening though. So just that is there in the resource bank. He set down, that's right. And it's basically for the whole of the Greek period study. So your students just throw it at them and see if they enjoy it. I also wanted to point out to you that if you're on that teacher directory, on the other tabs, you've got on the second tab, you've got all of the back omnibus articles. Now, I imagine here some people will know omnibus really well, some people might have heard of it, and some people maybe don't know anything about omnibus. So I will go from the last and assume you don't know anything about omnibus. Omnibus, as you can see, started in 1981. And it's a magazine which comes out, oh God, crikey, when does it come out? Quite frequently, as you can see, although these are all the articles. So I think twice a year, it's 6 monthly, going all the way up to the present day. And I think the ethos is that it's written for kind of sixth form students who are getting into classics. And there's a whole range of stuff. Some of it would be appropriate maybe if you're doing Latin literature, some of it if you're doing Class Civ, but some of it definitely ancient history. And if the column E here tells you what, so for example, there we got kind of Greek history, the worst moment in Athenian history. Wonder when that was. Let's try this article, shall we? So then the link, hopefully, if we get this right, should take you out. We'll find out what the worst moment in Athenian history was. Let's find out. 2 sorts of bad moments. We're talking about Miscellany, are we? It looks like something like that. But the point about this, so this is quite an early article. They're nice and short, if I can say that. So Tim Ryder, Reading University, going back a few years. So they are short. Now I've got way too much stuff on my screen now, but if I come back to this, what I have tried to do is create, if you like, subtabs where you can, along the bottom, categorize some of the articles here into, let's say, the Greek period study. So I've gone through the articles pretty closely, and I reckon all of these ones are useful for the Greek period study. And I've done the same for Athens because I teach Athens. So if you're teaching, well, everyone's teaching Greek period study probably. Again, we're talking about A-level here. Athens, then that's there. The moment hasn't really caught on. I've put 1 or 2 other things in there. But if you do want to add things in for your particular depth study or the Rome period study when you find it, that would be fantastic. Just want to think about how to use these articles. They are, as I said, very much aimed at sixth formers getting into the subject. And when we get a little bit into the more recent times, they look quite snazzy. So let's go up quite recently. My computer, I think the computer's just a bit slow, aren't they? When good old Neville Morley, there you go, love a bit of Neville. Okay, about Thucydides. Okay. And so there it looks a bit smarter, it's a bit more modern, slightly better publishing. And you can see here they're really pretty short articles. So one idea for how you might use these articles rather than just giving them to your students is this. Anyone who's seen what I've shared, so Liz has said published March and September each year, sent out with CA membership packs. So I'm a big fan of Socrative. And I'm really happy to talk about Socrative if people want to find out more. Again, Socrative, just a basic quizzing app. Again, like Padlet, you've got the kind of basic, and then you've got the sort of super duper higher level, but basic works really well. And you've got 3 question types. You've got multiple choice, you've got true or false, and then you've got a straight answer. And I've got actually those 3 question types in the first 6 questions. But what I've done here is I did get it out ready earlier, but is it? I think it might be this one. No, not that one. Sorry. No. So there is, anyway, there's a useful article again by Neville. Here we go. It's quite an early one called Cleo and the Misunderstood. Great article, which basically kind of puts the other other side of the argument for Cleo, and saying actually he was a patriot, he was very hardworking, you know, he died fighting for his city, you know, he's no worse than Pericles, with some really interesting evidence in there for that actually. And it's a very, very good article. So it's actually a good article both for the period study in Greece and for the Athens depth study. So what I've then created here is just a little quiz which kind of checks on their reading of the article. So this has two benefits. One is that I then have to check that they've actually read it, but I think more importantly, what it does is it really helps with that 20-mark interpretation question where they've got to read a passage from a scholar and then critique it. And I think using omnibus like this is really good, where you pick maybe a paragraph or two paragraphs and kind of say, what are the key points that are being made here? And trying to, well, here's one. So Mantitheus' court speech in the mid-4th century suggests that choose one, and then you've got 4 options for how you might interpret that, which is kind of the first paragraph, I think, of that. So you're asking them to sort of identify the key point or the key theme in that paragraph. I think it's probably a better example of that. Or even a true or false. According to Morley, Thucydides' account of Cleon's behavior at Amphipolis in 42 is inconsistent and designed to paint him in the worst possible light. So the answer is true. And then you can add in information which they read after they have answered it as well. So Cleon is said to be forced into attack because of his soldiers' impatience, etc. Again, according to Morley, there is plenty of independent evidence that Cleon was corrupt. That's false. Basically. So according to Morley, the 2 main objections to Cleon in the sources are, and then I've created 2 false ones and 2 true ones. I think this is a really good way, even though this is based really for my Athens depth study teaching. Again, if you look at this one, Morley's final conclusion is pick 2. It's a really good way to build muscle for the interpretation question. Just to take one of those articles, and you can do it in the depth study. Actually, that's the advantage of it. You can keep doing it through the 2nd year of the course if that's when you're teaching the depth study, but it keeps that skill set of reading a modern scholar and kind of extracting the key arguments in a paragraph. I just wanted to kind of throw that out there. Those omnibus articles are really fantastic and a really great bridging source, I think, for people starting out in the 6th form. So I'm going to stop sharing at the moment and ask if there are any questions about that. Someone ask a question, please. Silence. Oh. Tell me how great it was then, or something. But out of interest, I mean, how many people, but maybe put in the chat if you're using Socrative. Just put I'm using Socrative or something, because yeah, Edpuzzle's interesting, Alex. Edpuzzle's interesting. Be interesting. How many people are using Socrative? Just put yes in the chat if you're using Socrative at the moment. Okay, so not, yeah, okay. Not yet. I do most of my quizzing on Socrative. So if you want to just surf off the back of a lot of quizzes, which I've dumped in the shared area, then I'm not saying they're brilliant, but do go into or just have a play around with Socrative, because again, you can just get the entry level package. And the good thing about Socrative is that it gives you can see the results as they come in. So if you're doing it during a lesson, it basically, if they get the answer right, they go green, their box, and if they get it wrong, it goes red. So it's really good to see the progress that they're at, how they're getting on. And obviously, if you've got a column of reds, it means no one's understood that question or has understood the content. And it does automatically save it for you as well. So it's really great data, essentially. Any questions on Socrative? No?
James, can I ask a question?
Yeah, go for it. Please do. Hooray. Thank you, Steve. I love you.
I think I've seen someone here in this room display the results of Socrative on the screen for everybody to see. How do you feel about that? And then ask the students to kind of comment on why that particular answer might be better than that particular answer. What's your, I don't know what your view on that is, or what
I
other
think,
people's
yeah,
views
that's
on
a great
sharing students' answers.
Well, that's a great question, and I do that, but only because there is there are 2 buttons where you can hide the names and also hide the score. Okay, so what I will do is definitely hide name, hide score, and then they can't see who's answered or anything, and they can't work it out from the order, because I think it's done on who logs on first or something, or maybe it's by first name, but it's really hard to work out where you are. And so then, yeah, you can just put up either question by question. You can say, you know, let's have a look at this question, and 71% of the class got it right, and 29 didn't, or whatever. And you can also see the answers as well if it's a freestyle answer, or actually you can look at the whole grid and see, okay, there's, let's say, 10 questions and almost everyone got question 8 wrong. So in a sense, that might be reassuring. It's maybe less reassuring if you're the only person who got question 2 wrong, and you know that. But yeah, thank you. That's a really good question. I think if that's used sensitively, I think that's really helpful, actually. Does that answer your question? Thank you. Anyone else? Donald says that very good way to practice interpretation question. Yeah, Cam, it's very accessible material. I agree. Those omnibus articles, so they're all there. I mean, part of what I'm trying to show this evening is there's lots of stuff out there, and there's a link in the Google Doc as well, straight into that. So do use that material. Alex, were you going to share? Oh, Liz has got a hand up. Amazing. Let's go to Liz first of all. Hi, Liz.
Hi, sorry, just unmuting. Not really a question exactly, but the editors of Omnibus did say to me that they were keen to sort of use the magazine as a way of highlighting work, in particular of young scholars, as people who'd be interested in going to talk to schools. So I assume that all of their emails are either cited in Omnibus, I can't remember, or publicly available. So Neville Morley works at Exeter or whatever, you can find them. I don't know if people do use Omnibus by that, but I hadn't really realised that was part of the intention. So anyway, I think that's perhaps worth noting, that people, maybe authors in Omnibus, expect maybe to be asked to go talk to schools and would like to do so, as an example of sort of new work. So anyway,
yeah,
that's
fantastic.
Remotely interesting.
Thank you. And that's also, I mean, I think we've got Alice here from is it Liverpool Classical Association? So if there's someone up in that region, the kind of regional hubs could get a talk based around Omnibus or an Omnibus article as well. Thank you, Liz. Alex, were you going to say something?
Was this Quizlet?
Sorry, yeah.
Right. Yeah. So mine's rather less glamorous than Jamboard and such like. And to be honest, I've only started using this for ancient history in recent years, because I've used Quizlet extensively for language teaching, which I imagine those of you who teach Latin and Greek or other modern languages have done before. But I've started using it for sort of beefing up factual recall for ancient history in particular. So I imagine it's relatively familiar to some, but for those who aren't, I'm going to just do a screen share if it works. All right, it works. So Quizlet is free access, but then, like most of these things, there's a sort of upgrade package, which means you can kind of access different things. We're a Teams Microsoft school. Students can kind of access it on any email, but we tend to get them to use their school emails so that they can log in at school, kind of, and we're aware of what they're logging into. But you can create study sets. So this is, for an example, for GCSE, that sort of look a little bit like an online version of flashcards. So this is for the rule of campuses. If you've got campuses, you can sort of put in various terms or questions, and then kind of the answers, and they can engage in this in different ways. The most common one is flashcards. So flashcards eventually load. So this one's starting with the definition, but you can have it going the other way around. And so they can say it to themselves and then click on it. Or, well, that's come with the question first, but why did Cambyses invade Egypt? And they click on it and it says one of the reasons that he invaded Egypt, and then they can move on to the next one. Learn mode sort of does various things. It's not showing it on here, but you can decide whether you have absolutely nailed learning all of this stuff and you want to have harder questions first that maybe you get wrong more often, or you can pick a medium level, or you can pick a I don't know stuff, please start with easy questions that I tend to be getting right more often, which is relatively new, but it will give different kind of questions. So who was Cambyses to Cyrus? So he was son. Where did Cyrus make Cambyses governor of before he died? So, oh no, it's wrong. And then that will add it to sort of questions that they'll ask you more frequently. The one that my boys tend to love is this one, match. Mainly because it's competitive and they can get a sort of best time, but the idea was that you will sort of click on one of these and then on the match, and then it'll go away and it'll all disappear. And they quite like competing with each other for who's got the best time, who can make everything disappear the quickest. But it's quite useful, and you can kind of consolidate these in folders. So you can set up classes. So this is the one for my current year 11. And then you can set up an invitation link, which they can then use and they will join. They don't have to join it, they can still access it via the link, but the joining means that they get alerts when you put something new into it. So for instance, if I put a Darius one in, then that would sort of add into that. They can also make their own sets. So I haven't done this yet with my GCSE set. I've mainly done it for Latin literature, but I've had boys go away and prep Quizlet set on a section and then add it, and then all the other boys can use it, and they're able to do that. And the other thing, so this is, for example, a one for A level, so kind of key terms, key people. Competitively, you can also do games. It's a little bit sort of hooty. This will make, I think, well, hopefully the music won't start. It has that sort of wonderful chirping music that most of these things have. They can either play in teams, or you can have them play individually, and then you can ask which way round you want them to do, whether you want them to pick the right leader or whether you want them to pick the right definition. Usually that one's slightly harder. There, music. Can't turn it off. But they can then, they don't require a Quizlet account to do this. It's a bit like Kahoot. They don't require a Kahoot login to do this. So they can just go to that, put that code in or scan that, and then it does the sort of multiple choice game, and whoever and it's quite nice. It's got a little leaderboard, and often it has all the teams randomly assigned as Latin animals, but that's a really nice way of sort of plenaries, starters, you know, quickly, let's have 5 minutes on who the key people were in sort of the first half of the Peloponnesian Wars, that sort of thing. But yeah, I'm relatively new to using it to ancient history, because it's quite good for short little bits of information. So things like key people or key battles, that sort of thing. If you're as a kind of online version of, say, flashcards, but the boys that I teach do, particularly if they're coming in from language, are already kind of set up on this and do tend to like it. And the fact that it's got different learning modes and things, they like, you know, kind of makes it a bit more interesting and engages them in a bit of a different way. But yeah, sorry, I'll stop sharing that. Any questions on that? Yeah, it's not quite, I'm afraid it's not quite as glamorous as the other one, but it's just kind of nice as a different way of getting them to learn factual information.
But I mean, do you use Quizlet Live in lessons, Alex?
Yes.
And that, I mean, I think that's great fun because it's
which they love it, and the little
they love it.
leaderboard thing is great, because particularly if they get something wrong twice, wherever they are on the leaderboard, it shoots them back down to 0.
Yeah.
And then they have to start again.
a total heartbreak for them.
yeah.
It
Yeah.
breaks them, but it's good for them.
Yeah, and it's quite
kind of
nice having the
find-
individual and team kind of mix.
Yeah. I
'Cause,
find they learn a lot really quickly, actually.
Mm.
And it's one of those, I use it a lot as a starter activity, more in my Latin teaching actually than my,
Yes.
if I'm honest. But
I've used it extensively for Latin and Greek. I've sort of started coming to it for ancient history, and I'd say the past couple of years or so, because some of them have been using it for things like history, and so sort of adapting it for that.
yeah, it's perfect because it's the classic sweetening the pill. They actually just think they're playing this really fun game, which you might play on a Saturday afternoon with your mates, but they don't realize they're learning lots of ancient history or Latin at the same time.
It's also quite useful in terms of functionality. So all our boys have are very lucky. They have iPads, school iPads, or laptops. You can also have it as apps on your phone, so it's quite easy to do quickly. So if they're on the bus, I usually say if they've got a test, do 10 minutes on the bus on the way home, and then you put your iPad away. Yeah, Blooket. I use Blooket quite a lot, and that's so. I was just looking in the chat. Yeah, I don't know if Blooket's still paywalled or something happened to it last week and we use it anymore, which was really irritating. Because it's very similar to Kahoot, but you have to kind of do other things with it, and they absolutely adore it. Still temporarily behind its paywall, which is a real shame. Yeah, because Blooket's fantastic and has sort of different games, and ours we're quite sciencey, so they like Crypto Hack, of course.
Fantastic.
But of course. Yeah.
Thanks,
Any other
Alex.
questions on Quizlet?
Yeah, is there any questions out there? Silence.
Fantastic.
Thank you. Well, we've got a few minutes. We're in sort of 5-10 minutes. We'll move over to a bit more of a Q&A and general chat. But just a couple more from me. And it looks like I've used every app in the world, and I probably have, but only entry level. But I don't know how many people are familiar with Nearpod, but that's got some good options on it as well. So this is my Nearpod. It's fantastic, Nearpod, actually, and I feel like it's something I should use more often. Two things that I have used a bit with ancient history from Nearpod. One is it's this simple kind of matching game. So I'm going to show it on preview here. So you can do live participation or student pace. Student pace is where you can let them get on with it at home. Live participation is where they've all got to do it right in front of you. And so I don't really want the instructions to go away. So basically what you're doing here is just matching. It's what my dad used to call Palmanism with cards back in the day. So for example, Athenian aristocrat, probably writing in the 420s BC, probably not going to be Plutarch, only go for the old oligarch. Way, look at that, amazing. So it gets rid of those two squares for me. I've got those two. And then I'm going to go Aristotle. I'm going to get him wrong. So I'm going to say that Aristotle's actually Thucydides, which he definitely isn't. And look, it's gone red. So it's told me I've got that wrong and left the squares out there again. Okay, so there you go. Let's see how quickly I can do these. But Athenian philosopher's probably got to be him, hasn't he? There we go. And again, it's just a little muscle building exercise and something that it tells you how many tries you've had. Okay, and then because this is at sort of a live lesson, if there's another activity, then either teacher are controlling that. If you set at student pace, they can just get on with something else. So something else from Nearpod, which again I haven't, but they quite like, is you can create a kind of fill in the blanks exercise. So Greek leadership 479 to 475 is like, all the changes that happened after the Persian Wars. And you go into this, and so I can probably won't waste time explaining how I've set this up before. It's not very difficult to work out. But here I've created this text. So Herodotus tells us that after the Greeks were victorious, probably at the Battle of Mycale, isn't it? So let's just try and pull that up. And there it is. Okay. in Iona in 479, etc., etc. So if I try and do, they had a debate on Samians, doesn't make any sense. And I think at the end, I'm just going to put these in randomly now. And let's just see what happens. So don't really want this preview side. Oopsie. Should have told me that I didn't do very well there. I think it started again. How annoying. So if I just put 2 down and then I go done, I got 0 out of 8 answers correct, which is a bit disappointing. But let's see if I put Mikkeli down. Oopsie, up here. Oh, it doesn't want to drag Mikkeli. Don't know why. Does it want to drag? No, apparently not. Maybe it's because I think it's done. Anyway, you get the idea. So you've got 2 games there from Nearpod. Fill in the blanks, which is just a kind of very basic fact check. Let's do done and see what happens. And the matching game. I'm assuming there's not going to be questions about that. I can't see any questions in the chat, but maybe Gronny, you can tell me if there are any. So at that point, as we sort of move towards the conclusion, oh, Donald, go for it.
Thanks. Sorry, I wanted to ask because I've seen Nearpod before. In fact, I think someone in our senior leadership team clearly has shares in Nearpod, I assume. But I'm not really using it. One thing that always struck me seeing other people use it is it looks like a really great tool, but perhaps takes a long time to prep these sort of lessons, including these different modules and doing all that. Is that the case in your experience?
I mean, if we come, I think it depends what you're using it for. Okay, so if we come to this one, the matching one, and it's being really slow, but this one again, I think this is just as quick as writing a Quizlet or a Memrise or something like that. And again, I don't use it as much as I should. I should dump this in the shared resources. Everyone needs to just throw everything in the shared resources, and we can all kind of improve each other's work. But I don't think, I think this is just the same as writing a Quizlet or a Memrise. You know, that's really easy. Nearpod does give you a lot of options for what you can do. So if I go to create, for example, I'm going to create a lesson. You can create a video, and then it gives me lots of different options for the sort of lesson that I want to create. So here we go. Slides, quiz, draw it, matching pairs, etc. And if you go to all rather than the most popular, you can see kind of all the different options that you've got here. And so the interactive stuff is quite clever. Someone mentioned Ed Puzzle before, and they've got their own version now where you can put in a video and then ask your own questions over it. So that's the matching pairs one that I was showing you. Drag and drop, fill in the blank was the one that I've shown you. I think Nearpod's got loads. It's probably the kind of hidden gem actually tonight, and it's almost got too much, I think. But this video one, for those of you who know Ed Puzzle, I think is great because you can just download, let's say, a 10-minute, or you could take a documentary or whatever, and then you can do that thing where you stop it and then add in your question. So if it's, I don't know, Bethany Hughes talking about Socrates or something, which is that 1-hour documentary she's done, you can then stop it after 5 minutes and say, well, what's her key point so far, or do a multiple choice. So I think, what would be great out of this is that if some of us go away and experiment a bit more for ancient history and think what works. We've had a few more comments. A few people saying they need to go. Well, not surprising. I think my soporific voice is just doing its job here, but I'm glad that people are enjoying this. Yeah, I think Nearpod's got a range of options, Donald, and probably some of it is time consuming and some of it really isn't, I suspect. So just, that's a pleasure. Thank you for the question. I think one or two other things just wanted to highlight. So last summer, Peter Liddell, with me doing a bit of prompting, and Peter was very kind enough to say that it was a collaboration, but it was a very Peter Liddell heavy collaboration. It's really hard to find in here, but we have actually got an A-level ancient history. This is on Attic inscriptions education. We've actually got somewhere down here. It's awful that it's so bad. I'm so sorry. Where is it? We've done a collaboration. This I need to. Here you go. A-level ancient history, ATATIC inscriptions, view paper. Okay. So what we've done here, basically, I said to Peter, this is what we really need to talk about. So you've got, again, for the Greek period study, the 3 prescribed sources. This is for Attic inscriptions, and then 5 others that I think are really useful and basically ought to be on the syllabus. But remember that prescribed sources in the period study is a very loose term, and we'd like it to be suggested sources. And so I guess if you're teaching this, you'll know about the Chalcis decree, and what you've got here is a link to the Attic inscriptions page, and then Peter's notes, basically. And essentially all I've done is edit it and said, this is what would be really useful for teachers and students. I think that you're probably a sort of upper echelon students can access this. It's certainly really useful for teachers, and then you can condense it down a little bit. But then we've also got ones in there which are, I think, really useful, but not on the prescribed source list. I think they're more useful than quite a lot of the prescribed sources, but there you go. That's a controversial statement. And it explains why they're useful. That's the key thing. It will add something to your teaching. So a really obvious one is the last one, which is the Spartan Shield, which is dedicated in Athens. It's captured from the Spartans on Specteria. There's the Attic inscription. It hasn't got much in it, but we've also got the famous image of it there, which just comes from Wikimedia. Why that is not on the prescribed source list, I don't know. And I'm conscious that Alex is in the room, and he knows that I'm a great fan of ancient history, and I moan about these things from time to time, and we are looking to kind of finesse this. So hopefully, I don't know if people know that that's out there as a resource, but do go and have a really good look through this, because there's lots of stuff in here. I'd love there to be more in here. Please do just put your stuff down here. So Attic inscriptions education is there. You can open it and it takes you straight to that link, and that is, it's really good stuff there. So slightly to bring it to a conclusion, just want to mention one or two other projects which are ongoing. The first, I think, is an exciting one, which is that we, as part of the CA really getting behind education, one of my big ideas is during the lockdown, I did 1 or 2 podcasts for something I do out of school. And learned how to do them, and they're not very difficult. And so I kind of suggested to the CA, maybe this is something that we could do specifically for, well, ancient history A-level, class civ, GCSE. I mean, it could be for any of them really. But as part of our committee, we've set up podcasts, and I've been recording them with the wonderful Katrina Kelly, who's not here. She's the engagement coordinator for the Classical Association, and she's been facilitating this. So what we've set up is to start this off with the Greek period study, or almost all the Greek period study. And I've now recorded 4 out of the 6, and we hope to publish them in November, or later in November probably. And so 3 of the 6 podcasts will be 2 talking heads with me talking about the 3 interpretation questions. There is the dog, sorry. The 3 interpretation questions. And so that will be essentially the one that I've recorded already is with Polly Lowe of Durham and Neville Morley of Exeter, talking about why the Peloponnesian War happened. And I'm doing the other 2 interpretation questions during half term. And then I've interviewed 3 fantastic people: Judith Mossman about Plutarch, Rosie Wiles about Aristophanes, and Peter Liddell about the Attic inscriptions. So those will be coming out, as I said, we hope by late November. And it would be great to get really honest feedback about how you find that as teachers, how your students find them. They're supposed to be for students, and the idea is that they can be kind of on the bus home or the night before they're having a massive panic attack about their interpretation questions, and they can listen to the podcasts. So that is imminent. Hopefully that will be good. And then the other one I possibly mentioned, Grania, is we're thinking about trying to get more support around free access to text. Is it worth saying this or not? There's a shrug. Yeah.
You can do. It's perhaps not as imminent as we'd like it to be, but
no, it's an aspiration that we're very conscious that in ancient history we've got all sorts of different sources out there, and we want to get decent quality translations freely available as much as possible. So a sort of a longer term aspiration is to try and do that. And if you've got thoughts about that, please do shout. Anyway, a few people seem to be leaving, but I think that's probably a good time at that point. I know Alex is here, Alex Augie for OCR. So if you've got any questions for Alex, I'm sure he'd love to take them. If you've got any questions for me, I'm happy to take them. Grani, have you got any points or questions or what have you?
No, I actually just on that, in terms of other CPD that is coming up, obviously the CA and CFA's joint programme will continue, and we'll be looking to do another ancient history event in the summer term. But in the meantime, OCR have organised their own suite of CPD events as well. And I'll just pop a link in the chat to those events. There's a mixture of sort of paid and free events, and then there's some for GCSE and for A-level, and some of those are for, you know, ask the advisor Q&A, or it's for new first time teaching, or it's for looking more in depth at the assessments. So there's a range of CPD for ancient history from OCR too, but that's all I had to add. So I guess it's over to anyone else if they have any questions.
Any questions? Silence. Any feedback? Any thoughts? Also silence. Sounds like we might have reached the time for tea. Well, thank you everyone for coming, and this is recorded. Please do spread the word. If you haven't got access to the resource bank, do let me know. I'm really happy to share